I heard that song about 6 months ago there's a station out at Northern Kentucky University that does some kind of, they actually play real music, so I listened to it. And that song is actually by an artist that some of you probably haven't heard the name of since the 80s. It's actually by a musician named Sinead O'Conner, who is interesting that she writes a song about church, because the one thing that some of you may remember, even if you never heard her songs, was that in the late 80s, she was on Saturday Night Live, and she actually ripped a picture of the Pope in half during a song, and it had something to do, it was a statement. She's Irish, and there were some very major statements about it, and she really, at the time, hurt her career, in the United States at least, and different things. But when I heard this song, and I realized again, there are lines in it that theologically and doctrinally people have issue with. I get that. But when I heard this song, it really reminded me a lot of what we as Christians are called to be. If you look on the website, if you watch the news, I made a list of just different words that are used to describe the church. If you go on social media and all these types of things, this is just a short list of the different words that are often used as adjectives for the church. Boring, exciting, judgmental, forgiving, accepting, closed, open, angry, joyful, hateful, love-filled, irrelevant, meaningful, stagnant, vibrant, a waste of time, beneficial, out of touch, engaged in culture, liberal, conservative, independent, political, apolitical, hell, heaven, thriving, declining, religion, relationship, ignorant, informed, too sin-focused, not sin-focused, weak, powerful, at peace, at war, Christian, universal. There seems to be such a disparity of understanding of what it means when you say the word church. And so many of us we can get caught in this cacophony, in this mosh pit of ideas and thoughts and emotions and all of this stuff that's there. And some of you may not know what a mosh pit is. It's basically a group of people who get out in front of music and they really enjoy it, and so they try to kill each other. It can be fun, but they're banging and jumping and dancing and doing all this kind of stuff, and we can get stuck in the middle of that, and we cannot know which way is up, and it can be frustrating, and it can be tiresome, and it can be heartbreaking, and it can be exciting. But we don't know how to feel, and so often we are so wrapped up in all of that stuff, we miss a very clear thing that's happening all around us, is that in the midst of all of this stuff, in the midst of being banged and hurt and kicked and all of this stuff that's happening around us, there are still people daily with whom we come into contact that are begging you, take me to church. They're tired of the lives that they have lived. They're tired of what's happened around them. Their hearts have been broken. Life has kicked them when they were down. And I realize it's so hard to see that, because we see evangelicals see it one way and mainliners see it the other way, but we see so much in the world that seems like it does not care about the gospel. It's scary. And I realize there's all kinds of different things that happen. But when we brush away all of that, I tell you this morning, because it's the truth, there are people in this community around you daily who are pleading, take me to church. I've done bad things. I hurt, and I need healing. And when I hear that, I think of something Steve was just saying, but what I realize is so often when we say this and when pastors say this, it's because they look around and they want to fill seats. But here's the thing this morning. I don't just want you to bring people to church here. I want you, because we are called to do this, to take the church to them. Take the church to them as they are working, they're struggling. And sometimes when people are broken and when they're hurting, they say mean things. They're angry. It's part of it. But we are called not just to bring them to church, to take them to church, but take it to them. And I'll tell you, the verse that hit me this morning, I've got a story, and I'm talking really fast, so maybe got really early this morning. But if you will go to the book of John, I want to read the example of what it means to take the church to them. It's John chapter 8, one of the great stories. If you have been in church any length of time, if you've read through the book of John, this story is something you've heard. If there's ever a movie made about Jesus, it's referenced. I just want to... Someone this morning said you cry a lot, and they gave me this. Thank you, Veda. I think she said it was her dad's. That was that was sweet. So, and I need it because my nose is running right now. John 8. Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning, he was taken back at the temple. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. As he was speaking, the teachers of the religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd. "Teacher," they said to Jesus, "this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say?" They were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him, but Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. They kept demanding the answer, so he stood up to them. "All right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone." Then he stooped down again and wrote in the dust. When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, "Where are your accusers? Didn't any one of them condemn you?" "No, Lord," she said. And Jesus said, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." Let's look at the situation a little bit. Jesus. One of the things that I always seem to miss when I read this, and I was telling Amy, my wife, about this the other day. You know how sometimes in stories, not just when you're reading Bible stories, but Bible stories, or sometimes even in when you're reading a book, you get a certain idea of something, and then, or maybe you watch a movie and you get an idea of what the scene looks like, and then you read the book, or maybe you see something and you get a new perspective of it. And I have read this so many times, and I focus so much on the story of the woman, I missed something, and some of you may have missed it too. I always had this image of Jesus sitting out somewhere by him, kind of semi on his own, kind of doing this. And it says he was in a temple, but just kind of doing his own thing. But what I realized was that Jesus was in the midst of doing ministry when this happened. It says that he was teaching as this was going on. That means there were people around when these guys came and threw this woman at his feet. He was already doing what God had called him to do, to come and to teach the people a new way of life. He was already doing his ministry when this happened. And when these Pharisees brought her, there was a reason. They were doing it because they were trying to trap him. He knew that, but he didn't care. What Jesus saw was that in the midst of all of this teaching, there was a disruption that was more important than the teaching. And it was this woman. It was what was going on with her. And they brought her here, and I told Amy this, and she didn't think it was that funny, but I actually said, she never thinks most of my jokes are funny. I actually said these Pharisees are better evangelists than most of us Christians, because they actually brought someone to Jesus. But But here's the thing about the whole thing, and I realized the reasons, and she said, well, you know why? I said, yeah, I know why they brought him, but it was just my weird pastor head. The thing that I also see is that when these guys bring her to Jesus, the sin is not in doubt. The sin is not in doubt. She's caught in adultery. Jesus doesn't say, let's forget about the adultery. It's not a sin anymore. The punishment is not in dispute. What is Jesus' response when they say, the law says she should be stoned? This version, my translation says, he says, okay, if you don't have sin, throw the stone. Now, we focus a lot on this idea of the sinlessness of this and the fact that none of them but Jesus could do it. But I want you to see the fact that Jesus did not say there should not be punishment for sin. He did not say that. Because if he were going to say it, he could have said it there. The sin is not in doubt. The punishment is not in dispute. It was clear that it was there. And he reminds them of their own brokenness, and what they do is they leave disappointed. They're disappointed because they don't get to have a stoning. They're disappointed because Jesus has once again avoided the traps that they have set. They leave disappointed and convicted of their own sin. Because he doesn't say she didn't sin. He reminds all the rest of them, you also are broken. Then he looks at this lady and he offers grace. He offers forgiveness. He also offers a new direction. He says, I don't condemn you. Go and sin no more. Once again, validating that the reason she was there was legitimate. But he gives her a new way of living. But I also want to show something else. Every one of those men who left lost the opportunity to experience the same thing. They were frustrated, they were angry, they were mad at Jesus. Had they been at his feet, he would have offered them the same thing. He would have offered them grace and forgiveness, and he would have offered them a new direction. Yeah, they were following the law that was true, the law that had been given to Moses that they thought was truth, and that was the way they were supposed to be, but Jesus could have given them a new direction that day. He could have given them a new message. And when we talk about taking someone to church and we talk about taking the church to them, we are talking about living like this. Living like Jesus. So that people can sing songs of joy. They can sing songs of healing. They can look to the world and as it falls apart, they feel it falling apart around them and know that regardless of all of that and regardless of the pain and the struggles and the imperfections of their life, Jesus not only gives them forgiveness and love, but he gives them a direction to go. That is what it means to take the church to them. In churches, often, when we begin talking about taking the church to the people around us, we want to fix them. We want to go out and fix what needs to be fixed. We want to minister somehow, give them something. Any conversation we have here at the church about getting our name out and letting people know we are here, it deals with public relations and advertising and things like that. And I realize why we do that, and in certain, because of the way the world is, it works to do that. But those so often they're imperfect things, because in the process of that, we're getting the name of our church out. Maybe we're getting the name of our worship team out, or the pastor out, or whatever it is. But what they need is Jesus. This song hit me so hard because of this idea that she says, take me to church and not the ones that hurt. You and I have all been in churches that focus so much on all of those other things that they have hurt. Maybe they've hurt you. Maybe they've hurt other people with whom you've been involved. Maybe you have been hurt or have been the hurter. But we are called to offer grace and forgiveness and a new direction. Take the church to them. Choose people over the activity. I struggle sometimes as a pastor because I know that churches for the sake of some of this stuff, evangelism and things like that, we have to do things. But I worry sometimes, and not that we're in this position now, but for me as a pastor, I worry that Christians get so worried about doing the ministry that we've missed the fact that we are ministering to people. People who need our attention, people who need our time. People who don't need taught more. They need forgiven. We need to choose the people over the activity, whatever the activity. And I'm not just talking about church activity, whatever it is in your calendar. When someone comes to you and they're broken, making it a priority to offer them what they need to see the healing come. Because that's taking the church to them. That is what Jesus did. That's what Jesus does. Call sin what it is. Don't gloss over it. And I know sometimes when we use the word brokenness, because of that, it can become a kind of a catchphrase. We don't need to avoid discussing that there are things that God says are okay and there are things that God says aren't. How do we offer people forgiveness for things that aren't wrong? Don't shy away from it, no matter how difficult it is. But also don't include all of our own things that we think should be sins that aren't in Scripture. Remember, you are also broken. Had the Pharisees remembered that they too were in that boat before they brought her to them, to Jesus, perhaps their approach to him would have been different. Maybe their approach to him would have been more like the friends who had brought their guy to be healed by Jesus. Their purpose for bringing him to Jesus was to see his life improved, not to see his life ended. And with the idea that were they in the same boat, that friend would take them to see their brokenness healed. We cannot forget our own brokenness. Also, we cannot forget the change that God has put upon us when we come into contact with him. If we remain broken after we meet Jesus, we remain shattered after we meet Jesus, things don't change, the direction does not change in our life, and we realize it all looks exactly the same, but I get to go to heaven when I die. We are not living in the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ, nor are we attractive to anybody who hears it come out of our mouths. We must not forget our brokenness, but we also must not forget that he who has mended that brokenness. Always point to Jesus. Always. That's the priority. That's the goal. That is the foundation of it. Point to Jesus. Point to the Jesus of Scripture, not to the Jesus of culture, not to the Jesus of all the other things. But what did Jesus do? What did he offer the world? He offered them grace. He offered them love. and he kept offering it. You know, in the scripture, Jesus, at one point, Peter asked him, how many times should we, one of the disciples asked, how many times should we forgive a person? And they said, well, 7 times, because that was a really big number. They thought that was good, and they go on, and Peter says 70 times 7, which is either 77 or 490, depending on the translation. But here's the deal. It means a lot. And Jesus said, you just keep forgiving. You keep offering that grace. And that's a struggle for us sometimes because we feel like we have used it up. And as I was studying, I looked at this verse in John 1:16 this morning. And it's not on here, but I want to read it to you because I think it is a great example of how we need to be reminded of what it means to take the church to them. It says, from this abundance we all have received one gracious blessing after another. Another translation says, he has bestowed grace upon grace. Grace upon grace. He keeps piling it on because we keep needing it. But those of us who have experienced the grace and the forgiveness and the life-changing just power of Jesus Christ, we so often get very stingy with the grace. We are called to continue to pour it on. In Romans 8, there's a passage that is often used in churches to debate a doctrinal issue of perseverance of the saints or eternal security or all those types of things. And as I was reading it this morning, I was preparing this morning for this. As I was reading it, my perspective changed on this passage. It's Romans 8, and we're going to start in 35. Romans 8. And so often when we get into these debates, we miss, I believe, the power and the truth behind these scriptures. But it says, watch, that's not it, I'm going to go down. Can anything ever separate us from Christ's love? Does it mean he no longer loves us if we have trouble or calamity, or are persecuted, or are hungry, or are destitute, or in danger, or are threatened with death, as the scripture says? For your sakes we are killed every day, we are being slaughtered like sheep. No, despite all these things, overwhelming victory is ours through Christ who loved us. I'm convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love. Neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor demons, neither fears for the day, nor worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. No power in the sky above or in the earth below. Indeed, nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is revealed in Christ Jesus. That is a wonderful promise that we have. But as I was reading this and as I was studying this, I became a little bit convicted personally. Because I realized one of the things that pastors in the past have liked to do is they'd like to take a passage and they want you to put your name into it. And we love to do it with John 3:16. For God so loved Jamie that he sent his only son, that Jamie would believe in him. We love that because it's a very passionate, it's a very positive, exciting thing. Some of us would probably use it for Jamie has sinned and falls short of the glory of God, like that one too in Romans 3. But as I was thinking about what it means to take the church to them, this passage took on a different picture. I got a different image because I began putting my name and the name of our church into the position of Christ. What can separate me from the love of fellowship of faith? What can separate me from the love of put your name in there? We are called to love the world as Christ loved the world, because Christ loves the world through us. And I go through that list, and I wonder, Is this the kind of love I have? Do people who know me know that when stuff starts happening, when the world starts setting in, when things begin to fall apart, that Jamie will be there? Maybe he can't fix the situation like Jesus could fix the situation, but he will be available. He will love. He will pray. He will be that source of healing if possible. And you will be the source of healing if possible. That we look at people and we say, whatever happens, you know I'll love you. If I feel like I am completely and totally even if I am completely and totally covered by the stuff of the world, if I'm caught in my sin and I am doing completely stupid things, you will love me. But part of that love, part of the love of Christ, the great part of the message of Christ is not just that He offers forgiveness, not only that He gives grace, but also that He offers a new direction. Will you be the source of a new direction, of a better life? Because you are always pointing toward Jesus. You know, the Scripture says if you believe in Christ, some translations, you're a new creation. Others say there's a new creation. Old things go away, new things show up. So often we miss that part of it. But it's vitally important. And how do people know? How are people going to know the new direction if those who are following Christ never show them? I mean, how are we going to do it? We say, we want to get you, let's get you to pray the prayer, so we get you stamped and you get the Christian symbol, everything's good. Now from now on, you figure it out. You're on your own. And really, the grace is covering, so if you really mess it up, it's cool. You know, Jesus is happy with you because you prayed the prayer. It's not. We are Jesus. We are called to offer the new direction. We must be the church in our community. Take the church to them. Everybody in this room this morning identifies with one of the three groups of people in this story. You are either identifying with this lady because maybe you have been caught, maybe you have been struggling, maybe you have just felt, or maybe you're identifying with the narrator of the song. I've done so many things, I'm hurt, I need something, I'm just completely pushed down by life. I feel just completely wrecked. You may be in that situation. You may be in the situation of Jesus. You're following Christ. You want to be the source of grace and forgiveness for others. And if you are in that position, you have a great responsibility. You also have a great promise that you don't have to do it alone. But also, some of you may feel like you're stuck in the Pharisee mode. The only time you've ever brought anybody to Jesus is when you wanted him to drop the hammer on him. You guys laugh because it's true. When I was living in the South, and some of you know who know Jeff Foxworthy, know he said this too, but if you live in the South, you can say the most horrible things about somebody, horrible things, if you've in it with bless their heart, or we need to pray for them. So we got a few Southerners in the room. They know that's true. And actually, it happens around here too. We know that's the way it is. And so often, the people who are talking like that are so oblivious to the world of sin in which they are living. The gossip that obviously is part of their lives. The judgmental nature of the way they live. That on the list of all those sins, that they are, and some of them, the ones that they're focusing on the most, in the same list is the same stuff they're doing. And this morning, you may be a Pharisee. You may be in that situation where you understand religion. Maybe you've experienced the grace of Christ, but for some reason, you have fallen into that trap where you are no longer taking the church to people. You are destroying the name of the church by your life. That's hard. It's hard to hear. It's hard for me to say. I only say it because I have lived it. I still sometimes fall into that trap. It is extremely important that we understand and remember that we are given a great responsibility. If you are in any of those situations this morning, the great thing is, if you are in the position of being the church and the community and you just fall short and you feel like you need a better direction, Christ can give you a better direction. If you have fallen into that position of maybe ignoring your own sin and making yourself feel good, and maybe ignoring your own sin but really focusing on other people's sin, the great thing is the same grace and forgiveness that was offered to this woman are offered to you this morning. There is opportunity for a new direction. There is always opportunity for change when it comes to following Christ. And maybe you're the lady this morning. You just don't see a way out. You have the option. You can come into contact with Jesus. He's not physically here this morning, but the same forgiveness, the same grace, the same love that she experienced while she was thrown, broken in front of him on the ground, is yours this morning. It is available for you this morning. All you must do is accept it. So what will we all do with the forgiveness that Christ offers? What will you do with the direction that Christ has given you this morning? And how will you take the church to them? I want to read, as they get ready to come back up, I want to read this last verse. I'm going to sing songs of loving and forgiving, of eating and drinking, of living, of songs of calling in the night. Songs are like a bolt, and love's the only love you should invite. When is the last time that your involvement with somebody, that you took the Church of Jesus Christ to a person, and their response is, I am going to sing songs of forgiving, of grace? It should be the cry of our heart to be Jesus wherever we are, to take the church to them. Father God, I thank you this morning. I love you, and I'm so just blown away by your grace and forgiveness. Lord, had I lived in the time of Christ, there are so many times I could have been the one thrown at his feet to be stoned. But you have offered forgiveness to me. You continue to offer forgiveness to so many of us, to all of us, if we will accept it. I pray this morning that regardless of where we are on that continuum, whether we are just broken at the feet, full of the knowledge of our sin, or whether we have been living like it doesn't exist, or whether we've experienced the change, we've experienced the new direction you can give, and we just need an infusion of a little more energy, a little more hope that you are the one still in control, whether it feels like everything's falling apart around us. God, I pray this morning that we will grab onto the truth of who you are and what you are, so that when we leave, we can take the church to them. Not with a parade float or with an advertisement, but with our people being in this community, loving the community, and experiencing and expressing your grace on a daily basis. We ask this in your name. We love you. You are a great God. Your grace is everlasting. You give it to us grace after grace. And we are thankful. We love you. We ask this in your name.